This Sho S60 was my first aftermarket HHKB housing. Picked it up last August from Sho's their new storefront and proxied it via Superbuy. I rebuilt this recently with third-party Topre parts, including a Cipulot EC Pro 2 and Lite controller, aftermarket springs, housings, MX sliders, domes, and stabilizers. So I figured I'd take you through the parts I used and my thoughts on them, since it was my first foray into custom EC. These are the Tab V2 housings. I first saw them on the Matrix Corsa EC kit product listing on Novel Keys. Shout out to Wilson for finding me the Tactile listing. They're reminiscent of MX switches, with the little plate clips on the side, and obviously with the box-shaped stem, which differs from the original Topre circle stem. They're sold in packs that include the housing, slider, and these box-shaped silencing squares. My justification for this purchase is that they were priced somewhere between the Densest and Deskeys parts, and offer something a little unique in their design approach. I watched the Jason AX TV video comparing the PBB Densest Deskeys housings, which I'll link in the description. PBB and Densest didn't seem to come too close to comparing to Deskeys stock, so I opted for these tab parts, which haven't had too much coverage. Here is a quick and dirty comparison between OEM Real Force and the tab housing and slider paired with the DCS keycap. Picked up some Deskeys domes on their Cyber Monday sale. I went for the lightest weight, which was the 35 gram and the Tactile BKE domes. I initially tried PBB domes in the N1 35 gram variant, but these domes didn't seat the spring nearly as well as the Deskeys domes, probably due to a smaller dome size. We think they might be based off the NIS dome mold. Even the spacing of the 4-dome sheet with the PBB domes is a bit off. Cutting them down individually helped a tiny bit, but I think Deskeys is still miles ahead in terms of R&D. Springs I also picked up from Tab. I don't notice any spring noise in the silence build, so I think they do their job quite well. Next up are the 2U housings, which I picked up from PBB. These are super similar, if not exactly the same, as the KLC Densest EC parts. The crowns needed to be trimmed for these 2U housings, since off-center presses would make a sound where the underside of the keycap hits the crown. It was noticeable in R3 DCS, so the enter key, and both R3 and R4 GMK, so both the enter key and the shift key. Luckily, this is pretty easy to do. I used side cutters and a diamond file. I wet the plastic with some water before I sanded it down to save some cleanup. Cheers for the tip chemistry. I also used 2 Sho silencing rings on each 2U housing. The stabilizer housings and wire are from PBB as well. Again, super similar, if not exactly the same as the KLC Densest stabilizer kit. They're fantastic. I used BDZ for the wire and 205 for the housing. I would say it performs super well for the cost. I found it a little tricky to mount the spacebar since the stems move around a lot, but someone gave me the tip of flipping the board and putting it on that way, so cheers for that. Now that I've used this build for a few weeks, would I recommend the parts that I've used? Yes, I would. There's not a part that I wouldn't recommend for this build. I really like the tab housings. They are well made and have great tolerances and good QC. There isn't any wild rotation of the stems either, so looking down at the keyboard, all the keycaps are pretty nice and straight relative to one another. The only thing I noticed is this MX stems might be a little bit loose, so the DCS R3 control seesaws a little bit, so that's the only thing I've noticed. Next up, I should comment on the PCB. This is a Cipulot EC Pro 2 with a Lite controller. The Lite controller only has the USB-C, which is perfect for this housing. The tech in this thing is friggin' wonderful. There are EC calibration tools now on VIA, and the analog nature of EC recently inspired SIP to build some rapid trigger tools that I've been messing around with quite a bit. So huge shout out to SIP, can't sing his praises enough, pushing the boundaries of EC and also open sourcing a lot of his projects. Superstar, total superstar. I know a few friends who picked up the same housing and were nervous about the screws being threaded directly into the polycarbonate without inserts. Mine has held up really well. I just take extra care when taking it apart, making sure I'm in the thread before putting any pressure and screwing down. Now, a question I asked myself is, would I recommend venturing into custom EC without owning a HHKB or a Real Force or some other stock equivalent first? And the answer is probably not. I think third-party EC components open up a world of customization that Topre doesn't necessarily invite you to do, which is a really good thing. But I still think the HHKB is one of the most pure and enjoyable Topre experiences. The best thing about the rise in electrocapacitive style keyboards is that we are getting more third-party offerings as well as custom housings or shelves. As these third-party alternatives become available, less Real Forces and HHKBs need to be sacrificed for their internals when putting together parts for aftermarket case and housings. So you can enjoy these three fully functional keyboards instead of one if you're harvesting a HHKB, PCB, and keycaps, and maybe a Real Force for housings, domes, springs, and sliders, which will render the stock Topre boards completely unusable. I'd like to see some more EC samplers available for parts like domes, but for now I think the best way to find what you like is to try out custom EC boards and components at meetups, or raid your EC nerd friends' keyboards, Gordon. Anyway, I'll link some of my favorite guides in the description, and I hope this video was kinda helpful. See you next time.